Hey, springtime is just around the corner. What does this mean? It's time to shop for a tractor. Subcompact, that's what it means. So that's what I've been doing. I am in the research phase, the pre-buying phase. And what I'm going to show you in this video is the process I went through, at least for comparison. Now, Adam at Hometown Acres, he did a great video on this a while back where he showed his process. He had a spreadsheet. I think it's a great approach. All I did was just I added a lot more rows and a lot more points of comparison for the tractors. So I had Kubota, Massey, Deere, Bobcat, KIOTI, New Holland, RK. And so I'm going to show that. I'm going to show that spreadsheet. I'm also going to show you the New Holland online tool that lets you do a drop-down box version of a side-by-side comparison. And it gives you a lot of this data. It's a little harder, in my opinion, to digest it in their format, but from what I can tell, most of their data is pretty accurate. Now, you do have to take even the manufacturer's data with a grain of salt, because if you pick up a 2018 brochure for Massey, it might not be the same as the 2020. Numbers get tweaked here, here and there. And especially with the transition from pin-on to quick attach buckets, lifting capacities change because of that. So I'm going to get through that. I'm going to switch over to a screen share here in a moment and just show you the process I went through. Now, if you're looking for perfect technical experienced information, here's what you need to look for, here's the most important feature, that's not this video. I don't know that, right? I'm a first-time buyer. This is more about just digesting all of the differences, getting it all in front of you in one place so you can begin to understand what these things mean when you're tractor shopping. So I hope this helps. As always, post in the comments below if you have any questions, and I hope you enjoy.
Let's jump right in. Here is the spreadsheet with all of the subcompact brands that I compared, starting with Kubota and kind of working your way along. MF, that's Massey. So that's in the columns, and then each row represents the various parameters that I compared. So before I even talk about any of those, let me talk about the things I did not really consider. Four-wheel drive, diff lock, emission standards, the PTO, rear PTO RPM 540, the hydrostatic transmission, how many ranges? 2. Why did I not really look at those? It's because all of these models have those features. Now you will see here row 18 high-low on the range. So I started out comparing them and realized, hey, they're all the same. I just never took that column out or that row out, but you get the idea. So that's what I didn't look at. What I did look at, obviously, I've got these kind of grouped into various rows here. I kind of start out with the price and engine information. I have a couple construction like hood on row 11, material. So this is all about the actual tractor, and then I go down, starting on row 22. This is the hydraulic system information, just generally the hydraulic pump information. 26 starts the rear PTO information. 29, that's the mid PTO information, and then I've got a little information about the loader and bucket, and then third function, and then the total. I did total MSRP with loader and mower, and then total MSRP with loader only. That's how I compare. And you can see I don't have prices for everything. Now, further down beyond row 40, I have actual quotes that I got from dealers. Some dealers I went to visit, some dealers I just called them. And I did get different pricing from different dealers for the exact same model. Drastically different, not really. Maybe $1,000 ish difference between a couple of them, but they were all generally in the same ballpark. So let's look at the data here, and I'm not going to really talk a bunch about price beyond what I just said. I'm just going to start stepping through the rows. Well, one more thing about price. Column, obviously, or row 2 is base MSRP, so that's just the tractor. Um, Row 3 is, I say, delta versus the next tier. So if you bought or if you were looking at a BX 1880, for example, what's the price point to get you to a BX 2380? Well, you see it there in cell B3, it's 2279, and then kind of steps up from there. So all of these tractors have a base warranty. I wasn't really sure, 100% sure about how KIOTI handled things. And Deere, I'm sure they have a base. I missed a couple fields. Don't beat me up on that. So I've got that. Most of them, it seems like it's 2 years and they eat at least 1,500 hours, sometimes 2,000. I thought one of them had unlimited, maybe on the 2 year. Maybe not. But for a homeowner, like 1,500 hours, that's a lot, right? Especially in 2 years. So then there's the powertrain warranty, which is going to last, a little bit longer. And some of them, like Kubota, you can pay for an extended warranty. I know in the case of Massey, they have a 5-year powertrain, but at least on the 2017-23, for $500 more, you can take that 5 to a 10. So that's a nice option. Of course, these powertrains are supposed to be pretty rock solid, so hopefully that's not something you'd have to take advantage of. So then I have the actual, I call actual in row 6, actual maker of the tractor. So not all of these brands make their own units. So in the case of Kubota, they do. They make their stuff. In the case of the Massey, Agco, I guess is the parent company, and it's Iseki. I think I'm saying that right. The Bobcat is really just made by KIOTI. So actually what this Bobcat CT 1021, all it is, at least on the tractor part, is a KIOTI CS 2210. And I think there's an equivalent 25 KIOTI horsepower model to the CT 1025. So KIOTI builds that tractor, and I guess they're owned by Dadong. So that's out also the engine manufacturer. So now go over to KIOTI. You can see similar information there. Now keep in mind, so this Bobcat to KIOTI, this is a CS 2220. And again, I said the CT 1021 Bobcat is the equivalent of the KIOTI CS 2210. hard to kind of make sense of that here, but what you can see, I guess KIOTI is doing, they've transitioned to their 20 series. So if you look in cell I1, 2220, that's the 20 series. Jumping back to Kubota, they do the same thing. So their 80 series is what they're on now. There are other models. There's a 2370. I believe there's a 2360. That was their 60 series, 70 series, and so forth. So I'm not going to get it too much more into the model nomenclature, but let's see, Deere, they've got, they make their tractor engines are Yanmar. TYM makes the RK. Their engines are also Yanmar, as is New Holland. So then I go on to show the engine size in CC and liters for each of these. I was, again, like in the RK, I was missing it, right? So I don't have that information. And even model numbers, engine model numbers. So for example, on the Dadong, we say, well, a KIOTI is the same as a Bobcat. Well, it's a different engine model number. I don't know if it's the same engine on the KIOTI 20 series versus the Bobcat CT 1021 series. But I mean, it sure does look like it's a different engine. So moving on, then you have, let's see, we did maker, engine size. Then you have horsepower. So I was able to find, like for Massey published a gross and a net horsepower. So gross should be the output of the engine. Net is how much of that horsepower is actually translated into tractor power. Let's kind of dumb it down because that's how I understand it. So I didn't find that number for the other manufacturers. So I'm assuming their numbers that they publish are just gross. Now I did, if you look under column C, cell C9 for the BX2380, I did find a number that said 20.4. So I'm not sure if that was their net horsepower. But again, Massey was the only one that I clearly found that for. So a point, and I have RPMs here as well, so I'm going to go over that. A point of comparison between these tractors. For these various horsepower ratings, look at the RPM rating. Kubota 3200, Massey 26 and 3000, and then you can go along the line and see everyone else is up in the 3200 range. So Massey has a clear advantage here. They're operating at a much lower RPM. So that's going to be a little quieter when you need to achieve the higher level powers at higher RPM. Engine's going to be quieter, and it's going to be less wear on the engine as well. So I kind of thought that was a big deal with the Massey. So then we have tractor weights comparisons. Not a whole lot of difference here. I do question this Massey number though. You see the 1521. It's the same number as 1521 on the BX 2680. Um, Seems like a data error. I could not find the Massey number, so I pulled that from the tractor data site. So could be a data error. Um, Moving on, hood fender material. Metal hoods, I guess, are a big deal because you could actually drop some of your load onto the hood. I have seen some YouTubers with cracked old Kubota cracked hoods, and I'm sure other manufacturers as well. So what I'm showing here is just the makeup of their tractors. So I break it down by hood and then the side fender and the area around the seating area. As to whether or not it's metal or plastic. So for example, in the Kubota case, it's metal, obviously the hood is. Around the fenders it's metal as well, but then they have these plastic inserts for like the cup holder and right around the controls and everything, but the actual base material underneath of theirs is metal. Different case with Massey. Massey, boy, when you look at the shiny red paint, it looks like metal around the seat, but it's actually plastic. And then I'm not sure about the Bobcat. I was on one. I just can't 100% remember if it was metal. I'm pretty sure it was on the fenders. And I think it was the same on the KIOTI, but I left those blank. Of course, the Deere is all metal on the fenders, and I can't remember on the hood. But that's a point of comparison. ROPS, does it fold? Does it not fold? When you're checking your height numbers, you want to know whether you have a folding ROPS or a fixed ROPS. And you can see, I think Massey's the only one that has a fixed one, and then their fixed is a little bit shorter than the folding ones. And then you have your overall length, width, height. And one thing I did notice is that these length numbers include the rear PTO lift arms. The actual core tractor is much shorter, and I think a lot of them you can actually kind of disconnect those arms and tuck them up if you needed to store or transport in a shorter space. Ground clearance is also another point. Not drastically different between the various models, but you can see the Kubota kind of has an advantage here over some of the other ones. We've got the tilt wheel armrest, turning radius. I'm not going to go through all this. Hydrostatic, loader control locations. So this is the loader arm. Most of them are on the fender. I type forward here in column G for the Bobcat because it's in front of you. I'm sure there's a different term for that, um, but that's how I designated it. And then the forward and reverse hydrostatic pedal, they all seem to just have a side by side pedal, for one for forward, one for reverse, except for the Kubota, which has the treadle pedal. So your toe makes you go forward, and then you pull your heel back, and that will move you in reverse. And then another key distinction here is, okay, if I buy a tractor without a backhoe, can I add a backhoe later? And generally speaking, the answer is no. I have a typo in one of these here. So for the Kubota, for example, you would need to buy the BX23S. If you wanted a backhoe, that's what you have to buy. In the case of the Massey, you need to buy their 1723E TLB model. You can't buy the E and then add a backhoe later. Now, I did hear one of the dealers said that Woods now has one that you could add without voiding the warranty, but I don't have any firm information or data on that. So I think Bobcat and Coyote were yes as well. But again, the point is this is a key thing that you want to look at. Another key thing is the hydraulic pump capacity. In row 24, most manufacturers publish their total gallons per minute flow. Only a few manufacturers, Massey and Deere and New Holland, show you, and this is up on line row 22, how much of that flow is actually making it to your implement. So your 3-point PTO in the back, or your mid-mount PTO, or your loader. Because a portion of that in row 23 is used for your power steering. So I'm not sure why Kubota doesn't publish that number. Bobcat and Coyote, I could not find it either. But I sure as heck do see why. I see why New Holland publishes it, because they have a pretty high number, 4.6 over in column N. Massey as well, they're at 4.3 and 4.9. And certainly I guess that is what contributes to lift capacity as well. And hydraulic pressure, I guess, feeds into that. Beat me up on that one in the comments. I'm no expert, but that's kind of my understanding. So I guess since we're talking about a hydraulic pressure, generally what you'll see is tractors that run at lower pressures have lower lift capacity. Higher pressures mean higher lift capacity. So that's, I guess, something to look at. But using the Massey for example, you probably don't want to be lifting 900 pounds with this thing, unless you really know what you're doing. So probably not that big of a deal to get too hung up on lift, the lift numbers, unless you have a specific application and you know exactly how much you need to lift. So the 540 PTO in the rear, I found a note on one of the manufacturers that called it a 6 spline. I guess that's standard. So I just kind of wrote the horsepower down. And then row 27, we have the PTO lift. They're all pretty close as far as the lift capacity at 24 inches. You'll also sometimes see the lift capacity right at the pin in the back, which of course is going to be much greater. And then row 28, this is, I think, a big deal. How do you control the height on the PTO? Of course, up pulls it up, down sends it down in all cases, but in the case of the Deere, it's called positional. So there's a little stopper, and you can actually position the control at the exact same level every time. So if you were making multiple passes on a particular application like grading or tilling or whatever, you could hit the same height. With the other tractors, you're just kind of have to guess and sort of like inch it along to get it to the height you want it to be at. So then I've got mid-mount mowers, some pricing here. The italicized and underlined prices were some estimate numbers. I'm not sure where I got 1941. Must have been from, who knows, or 1899. It was just a guess when I was trying to do some apples to apples MSRP pricing comparison. But the bigger point to look at here is which manufacturers offer a 54 versus a 60, and are the 54s drive over, or are just the 60s drive over? So in the case of the Bobcat, as far as I know, they only offer a 60-inch deck. In the case of the Massey, they only offer a 60-inch drive over deck. They actually do have a 54-inch deck, mulching and side discharge versions that are not drive over. In the case of Kubota, I know they have 54. I'm not sure about 60. But again, overall point is, for example, with the Bobcat, if you needed a 54-inch deck, do not buy the Bobcat, because you cannot get a 54-inch deck, period. Forget the drive over versus non-drive over difference. You just can't get it. Let's see, mid-mount PTO. There's some slight differences in the RPM. So this would be for a belly mid-mount mower. So then I go into the loader specs. So these just MSRP on the pricing. So then we have maximum lift height. You can see really this is row 32. Not major differences between the various models. The Massey has a little bit of an advantage, and frankly, that's I think only because of this is the new FL 1805 loader. Their old DL95 loader, I think, was a little bit shorter, maybe an inch or so. So then another key differentiator here on line 33 is the loader lift capacity. Just watch your spec. Some specs show the lift and that's at the pin, and some of them show the spec with the skid steer quick attach on, which of course that's going to lower your lift because it's capacity, because it's pushing your load further out in front of you. Some of them also show the loader breakout force. Others don't. Loader bucket width, most of them are 48. I believe the Deere H120 loader was 49 inches. I'm pretty sure that's what I had found, but I have a question mark, so maybe I've got that wrong. So then line 36, single point loader disconnect. That's the big selling feature of Kubota. It's really cool, really nice. Everyone else just uses the 4 quick couplers. Level indicator, I know there's like a rod, I call it, I guess that's what it's called on the Kubota, and that's an option. Not an option on the Massey. Some of them just have like a sticker sort of on the bucket, and you can sort of eyeball what level is. And then I started recording some data about costs on third function. I know for Massey, for example, the FL 1805, I guess, has a factory third function option that can integrate, but the DL95, the older one, doesn't. But then I think there's like third party add-ons you can go with. So that's the spreadsheet I've got. Now, if you don't want to build your own spreadsheet or look at my stuff, the alternative is to go here. Go to the New Holland site and you can do a side-by-side comparison. So I'll just, step through this here. We've got the subcompact on what is it? The New Holland. So, right, you want to pick the New Holland as the example, and then you can go through and pick, Kubota, and here you can see Kubota is the one I have picked, and then you can do Deere, and just do a side by side and compare all the specs. And from what I could tell, most of their specs were pretty darn good, pretty close to the stuff I had found. So differences, yeah. So like the PTO horsepower on the Massey 1725M, I show is 18.5, but New Holland shows it as 19.6. But then I have another Massey brochure that shows it as 19.6. So I have conflicting Massey brochures in that case. So I'm assuming the New Holland site and one of my Massey brochures is correct. I've got minor differences in widths. We're talking like half an inch. Minor differences in weights, like 50, 60 pounds. So that's all I noticed on the models I looked at as far as differences on the New Holland website. But overall, just I think a really great comparison tool. And of course, it goes beyond subcompacts. You can look at other models, not just the one, essentially the 1 series subcompacts. So that's it. That's my research process that I went through. If you have any questions, post them in the comments. This video got a little long, but hey, that's how it goes. And I hope you enjoyed watching. Thanks.